Welcome everybody, thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Today I'm going to be talking about Redshirts by John Scalzi. This was a book that I was really looking forward to. I've recently discovered John Scalzi and I've read the first two in his Old Man's War series, and I started watching reviews about Redshirts and I'd heard nothing but incredibly positive and awesome things about this book, so naturally I had very high hopes. Redshirts is kind of a spoof off of Star Trek. However, you don't have to have been a fan or even seen any of Star Trek at all. The title's kind of a spoof because the lowest ranking members on the Starship Enterprise wore red shirts, and typically if they visited a planet or went into a dangerous situation, the people wearing the red shirts died because they were not important to the story. This book follows Andy Dahl, who is assigned to the Starship Intrepid, and he starts noticing some very odd things. There are a couple of higher ranking members of the crew that everyone else seems to desperately stay away from. There's some stuff that just doesn't make sense going on. Andy and his friends start realizing that going on missions with one of the key members from the crew means you're probably gonna die. They also start realizing that there's a couple of important members of the ship who get in near-death situations and almost die repeatedly, but always seem to make it through. And they eventually realize that there's something called the narrative that is going on in the ship, and that if you get caught up in the narrative, especially being an unimportant character, you're probably going to die. The narrative gives you information you wouldn't otherwise know. It makes you do things that don't logically make sense. I was very impressed by the beginning part of the book. It was what I was expecting. It was funny, it was quick moving, the characters were good. It was basically what I'd come to expect from John Scalzi. It took a turn about, I guess, 2/3 of the way through that I was not a big fan of at all. I didn't really like it. It didn't ruin the book for me, but it did decrease my enjoyment. There's also probably a big chunk of this book is these three things that happen after the story is done called codas, and they're kind of controversial. Some people love them, some people hate them. I think there's three of them. I didn't really care for the first two. The last one I really did enjoy. I think it was Nancy Martinez, I think was her name, which is kind of her story. I enjoyed it. I thought it was well written. The thing that I've come to appreciate about Scalzi is his books are fairly straightforward. The plots are fairly simple, but they're easy reads and they're very enjoyable. I thought he got a little bit too focused on the plot, and because of that, he sacrificed some of the easy flow and the natural humor in the book. I mean, obviously there's a lot of people who don't feel this way, but unfortunately I do. Like I said, so far it's my least favorite Scalzi. It doesn't really dampen my enthusiasm for the guy at all. I just think he made an unfortunate choice in this book. This concludes the spoiler-free version. If you've already read this book, or you're not interested in reading this book, or you just don't care about spoilers, then feel free to continue. But I'm going to delve more deep into what I didn't like about the book, because basically what happens is these people realize that they're part of a television show, and that the narrative is basically what's being filmed, and life goes on with normal as long as you're not caught up by the narrative and actually part of what the audience of the show is seeing. But as soon as you get caught up in that, like I said, you do stupid things, you start acting out of character, and if you're unimportant, you end up dying. So they decide, Andy and his friends decide that they're going to do something, so they travel back in time to 2012, which is when the series is being filmed, and they meet the 2012 normal actor versions of themselves and have this elaborate plot to fix things. I didn't like it. I thought it was a little bit confusing. It didn't really seem to make a whole lot of sense to me. It just really didn't do it for me. This is only my third Scalzi book, but it was the first time I think that Scalzi really went outside of his wheelhouse and attempted something that to me just didn't really work with the story. Like I said, it was still a good book. Out of 10 stars, I would give this one a 6. Like I said before, a lot of people love this book, so you might not want to just take my opinion on it, but those were my thoughts. Thank you very much again for watching. I know everyone has busy lives, and I do appreciate you taking time out of that to watch my very illogical and unorganized ramblings. Thank you again, and I will see you next time.